The end. It's actually over this time. I'm not planning on making another proper Attack on Titan analysis for at least a little bit, but I know a sizable portion of my audience is here from my videos on the series and would maybe want to hear my thoughts on the ending. So this is an anime-only's unstructured, unfiltered, rambling review of Attack on Titan Season 4 Part 3 Part 2, the finale. Spoilers ahead. Part 1. First, we get our epic, massive final battle, which I don't really feel the need to talk about in depth. It's Attack on Titan. The action is sick. It's awesome. We know this. Here's a list of stuff that I thought was especially cool during this fight. All the ancient titans, especially the Warhammers. I love the Warhammer Titan. Peak Mommy almost taking out Eren solo. This shot of Mikasa and then revealing that Falco has the flight ability. I really love that Falco, the goodest boy in the whole show, is the one to have the power of flight. I think it's pretty significant thematically, and I'll probably make a video on that after rewatching the whole series. Our old buddies coming back to fight. I actually got very excited when I realized Ymir's Titan was back, even though I didn't think I cared about her that much. Levi killing Zeke, the fucking huge hallucigenia monster thing, this shot of Armin right before he nukes everything, and two colossal titans punch each other. Part 2. During this, I especially loved the scene with Zeke and Armin in the paths. This is one of the few things I hadn't heard about from people talking about the end of the manga. Like seriously, just based on the sheer volume of comments and posts I had seen, even without direct spoilers, I think I had almost the whole manga ending pieced together. Anyways, in such an action-heavy series, it really gives a lot more weight, in my opinion, to have the battles decided not purely through physical strength, but through important character moments. This scene, discussing literally just the meaning of life, is such a great but concise look into Zeke's depression, which is really what drove his whole ideology, viewing life for Eldians as just unnecessary suffering and failing to grasp anything that would make it seem otherwise. Another video might be coming related to this part. It's such a great last character beat for him, and I love that his final moments were of him finally discovering some beauty in the world, and also getting killed by Levi. Anyways. Oh, and then of course Mikasa kills Eren. I think this is actually like the first time I understood what the story was doing with Mikasa, other than having her be a badass. I like this idea of having to get over your personal attachment to a person in order to make a utilitarian decision to save more people, or save other people which you have now been closer to due to the first person's absence. I also like how they relate it to Ymir, the founder. That helped me get it a bit more. Oh, there's also like a scene where Ymir looks at some pigs and she smiles. I think that happened. I liked that. I don't know why it was in this, but I liked it. I've come here from the editing realm because I forgot to talk about this other scene. Ever since the rumbling began, we've been getting these occasional segments of the rumbling from its victims' perspectives, and they're all awesome. There's a couple in this finale as well, namely this one. So I had seen this panel with the baby, but seeing that the full context is these people trying to save the baby from falling, just damn. The scene also has an interesting coloring choice. I do think it's a cool idea, but honestly, as a bigger trend for how MAPPA has been doing things, there's something about the coloring and maybe digital processing that makes some stuff look kinda not so good to me, and this is one of those. Like, there's also a lot of keyframes which have come out, and looking at them, I can't help but feel like a lot of detail is lost, especially some that I've seen of Eren's Titan. It still looks sick in the final product, but these raw frames just look so much cooler to me. And I don't know, with this scene, it's like something just feels like flat or something. I don't even know how to describe it. Okay, moving on. Okay, now for the more controversial stuff. Part 3. Listen to this. I really didn't find myself having problems with anything here until Eren's talk with Armin, which was odd. I think the scenes with Mikasa and Eren are good. I even think this part with Eren crying about Mikasa is perfect, really. I love how Armin so obviously baits him into a response, and then what he says is so pathetic anyways. After watching, I compared the full scene to the one in the manga, which I think is significantly worse. This line from the manga is particularly awful, though it might just be the fault of the translation, but basically it's bad. Here's a video I watched that I liked, which breaks down more of the changes and how they make the scene better. But then there's still a few specific lines in this scene which I think are pretty strange. Eren says that his plan was to turn his friends into heroes by having them stop him, which, aside from kind of just being lame, really just can't be true, as you wouldn't need to go as far as he did to do that. Though, I guess he does admit he's an idiot later. But then he also says later in the scene that he did want to trample the rest of the world, so I guess the first line wasn't supposed to be taken completely at face value, though though I feel like they could have done more to indicate that in the moment. But then Eren says that he doesn't know why he destroyed the world. Okay, what the fuck? If this was a retcon meant to establish this as Eren's plan all along, I think that's bad. But I think I can stretch this scene in my head to the point where it makes sense and is good. Okay, so Eren is not exactly in the right state of mind. He's experiencing all of the past and future simultaneously, which is making him wonky. I think it then makes sense to think of Eren here as almost being separate from Eren doing the rumbling. Eren in the real world is being driven by all the things we thought he was: revenge, protecting the ones he loves, etc. But the Eren talking to Armin right now is more dissociated, observing his whole life from the outside, more focused in this moment on having a talk with his best friend than on the cycle of revenge which killed his mom. I think I can also look at his plan to turn the Alliance into heroes as kind of a statement of fact. Eren in the moment did set out to destroy the world because of his anger and his belief that it was the only way, whereas Eren in this scene, in his dissociative state going insane, is simply recalling his memories of the Alliance stopping him in the future. He knows that they are going to stop him, and his prediction is that they will be heroes for this. I think there's also an aspect of coping and self-justification that he's doing for his own actions. I don't think I'm explaining this as well as it makes sense in my head, and this might all just be huge cope on my part, but basically, these lines to me don't have to make Eren's desire to destroy the world void, and now his plan all along was this other stuff. I do think that this scene could have been tweaked a bit more though, and maybe some lines should have just been completely cut out. A few of them make the scene unnecessarily confusing, and I can understand why a lot of people don't like it as a whole. For me though, I think it really is just the wording of specific lines. Overall, if I'm interpreting the scene correctly, I think what it's trying to convey is good. This face that Armin makes, which is supposed to match Eren's face in the previous special, is weird, but then they hug as they say they're gonna go to hell together, and it's sweet. I love them. I'm glad to see this in the ending of this series. Part 3, Part 2. Scenes which make me feel validated as a peace enjoyer. So the Alliance goes on to help the world rebuild and develop after the rumbling, and from what I understand, they just establish world peace. I love seeing this, even with how briefly it has gone over, because if we look at real world history, what seems to create a lasting peace is making sure the people who are left are helped, rebuilding and organizing, showing that you are there with good intentions for them, not just leaving them to wallow in their destruction, slowly developing and building their rage against you. I actually think it would be very interesting to see more of what this process involved for the Alliance, like a kind of epilogue or side story, but maybe that's very specific to my own interests and not many others. I don't know. Okay, and then our conclusion for them is on this boat heading back to Paradis, as the fascists have taken over and the island is now the last stop for creating global peace. We end before we actually reach the island, unsure if the peace talks will work out, but still optimistic. Usually I don't like when endings are ambiguous like this. I like when a series very strongly delivers a very specific message, a very specific position on the issues it's doing, but I think I actually liked the fact that this one ended in a somewhat uncertain place for reasons I'll get to in a moment. Okay, so after some other stuff, we see Paradis growing through the future, getting more technologically advanced until it gets fucking nuked. This part was also a very clear change from the manga, which had the city with more modern looking buildings rather than cyberpunk style being carpet bombed. I feel like the intention behind this change is to make it more obvious that this is a separate conflict from the one between the Eldians and the rest of the world, or at least make it less clear if it's the conflict of the show versus some other future conflict. The futuristic buildings imply that it's been hundreds of years rather than a few decades, at most a century. Also, I think the placing of the panel in the manga makes it feel more related to the events of the story, which I don't think Isayama intended to imply, whereas the anime time-lapse deal makes it feel more removed. I've heard a lot of people phrase the significance of this as the conflict will never end, human nature, or whatever, and this just strikes me as trying way too hard to be pessimistic and doesn't actually capture the full essence of the series. There's a very good point that Alexandixer makes in one of his AOT videos, talking about this conversation back in season 3 between Kenny and the King, that violence appears to be an unavoidable truth of the world, but there is also often this miracle of peace achieved through empathy and understanding. After watching that video, this has always like stuck with me while watching and talking about Attack on Titan. Like, it's probably true that achieving peace once will not result in the end of all conflict for the entire future of humanity, but this just makes peace, when it is achieved, a much more beautiful thing, and it's certainly still something to strive for. I think this point makes much more sense as a larger message of Attack on Titan, and especially with this ending and epilogue. The message of Attack on Titan has never just been that the world is dark, but instead it has shown us time and time again that despite the darkness, it is possible to find beauty. It is possible to achieve peace, love, and meaning, and we must hold onto the hope and determination that drives us to achieve these things for ourselves and the ones we care about, and not give into despair. I find the latter meaning much more profound and interesting. It actually points people in a positive direction, whereas just saying conflict will always exist, or even taking it as far as the cycle of violence between these groups will never end, strike me as reducing the essence of the series to the point of taking away what makes it special, reducing it to what feels like edgelord garbage to me. Part 3, Part 2 Epilogue. And it is for all of these theme-related reasons that I actually like this ambiguous ending, not knowing if the Alliance will succeed in their peace talks now. Because the point of the story is not to say that peace will certainly be achieved. Of course, it's important realistically that the characters achieve their goal, and it would make me feel good inside to see them reunite with Mikasa and Historia and have everyone hug it out and watch this story's cycle of violence definitively end. But thematically, they have already achieved what's important, choosing to pursue the miracle of peace in the face of the world's darkness. And that's all we, as the audience, need to know. 9 out of 10.